Member Von Paris, whenever you're ready.
Okay, good. All righty. We do have a quorum. Member Ardinger could not be here today, but we do have a quorum. Good morning. My name is John Von Paris, and I am the chairman of the MDTA Finance Administration Committee. I hereby call the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee to order at 9:01 a.m. In accordance with the live streaming law, this meeting is being conducted via video conference and is being live streamed on the MDTA Finance and Administration Committee webpage. All members will have their video active during the entirety of the meeting. To minimize background noise during the call, I would ask that everyone on the line please mute your phones except when speaking. I ask that those who are presenting or answering a question to please turn your video and audio on when speaking. When you're done, please turn your video off and put your audio on mute. There are no members of the public, no elected officials, and no media who have pre-registered to comment at this morning's meeting. This time we will begin with agenda item number 1, the open minute meetings from October 10th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved, Member Rosen.
Thank you, Member Rosen.
Second, Member Carroll.
Thank you, Member Carroll. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We will move on to item number 2, also as an approval item, debt policy, and Alan Garmin is here to present. Good morning, Alan. How are you?
Great. Good morning. Thank you. I'm well. This is our annual review of the debt policy. It's required by the policy itself. And so we're seeking the concurrence of the Finance Committee to move forward to the full board for approval. Following an annual review by internal staff and an external municipal advisor, there's just one recommended update to the policy that will incorporate the legislatively increased bonding limit. In April, the legislation amended the transportation article that pertains to the authority 4-101. It increased the bonding limit to $4 billion from $3 billion. And our most recent financial forecast was demonstrating a bonding limit increase within that 6-year program period. Our debt outstanding is currently just over $2 billion, so there wasn't any need to rush to get board approval back in April. We thought we'd just wait until the normal annual review cycle. I incorporated in that bold section limitations on indebtedness. That's the particular section of the debt policy that would be changed. Formerly it said $3 billion. It's in yellow highlight, increased to $4 billion. On page 2 of the memo, I just wanted to highlight that the debt policy includes both legal requirements within Maryland state law, also the trust agreement legal requirements, as well as board directives to ensure financial strength. The guidelines and mandates support credit quality and access to the capital markets at the lowest possible financing rates. The table on page 2 highlights some of the key sections. The state law references are in section 1. Our $400 million unrestricted cash target is in section 5. And we have the debt limit increase, the 2 times debt service coverage target or minimum, a level debt service goal, and other details on capitalization of interest, variable rate debt, our credit ratings goal, and then the annual policy review is in section 36. So we're, again, just seeking a recommendation from the Finance Committee to move forward to the full board for approval of the updated debt policy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alan. Are there any questions from any of the board members?
No, have none.
No.
Okay. Is there a motion to advance this item to the full board for further consideration and approval?
So moved, Member Carroll.
Second,
thank
Member
you.
Rosen.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Al. Thank you. Next item is an update. It's traffic and revenue forecast and a traffic and revenue forecast update. And Shantel Green will be presenting, as well as Kelly Morrison with CDM Smith. Kelly, welcome. And hello, Shantel. How are you?
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, I am Shantel Green, Director of Finance here at the Authority. Today, I'll be discussing some of the highlights from the most recent annual traffic and revenue report that was prepared by the independent traffic and revenue consultant, CDM Smith. Please note that I am also joined by Kelly Morrison from CDM Smith. Kelly is a transportation planner and one of the key members of the CDM Smith Traffic and Revenue Consultant team. I will begin the presentation by providing the committee with a big picture overview of the most recent traffic and revenue update, and Kelly will delve into some of the more intricate traffic and revenue assumption details. Enclosed within your materials, you'll find a summary memo, a copy of the traffic and revenue report, and a presentation that outlines some of the main highlights from the most recent annual TNR forecast update. For purposes of today's presentation, I'd like to direct your attention to the presentation document that begins on page 34 of your PDF materials. So if you turn to slide 3, which is on page 36 of your PDF materials, you note that compared to the previous forecast, system-wide in-lane toll and administrative revenues are expected to decrease by approximately $46 million or 1% over the fiscal year 2024 to 2030 timeframe. Turning to slide 4, the majority of the decline in projected revenue, which is approximately $73 million, is expected to occur on the agency's legacy facilities. If you'll turn to slide 5, you'll note that total revenue on a combined basis for the ICC and I-95 ETL is expected to remain essentially flat throughout the 6-year forecast period. And then if you turn to slide 6, toll administrative revenue is expected to increase by approximately $27 million or 8% throughout the forecast period. And then if you turn to slide 7, when considering forecasted revenue on a system-wide basis during the fiscal year 2024 to 2030 forecast period, the majority of the revenue collected is projected to occur on the agency's legacy facilities. And if you turn to slide 8, when taking a deeper look at in-lane revenue projections for our legacy facilities over the forecast period, approximately 62% of revenues comprise passenger vehicle revenue. Turning to slide 9, when considering forecasted near-term in-lane revenue for the legacy facilities, EasyPass revenues are projected to significantly exceed video toll revenue collections for both passenger and commercial vehicles. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kelly Morrison to walk you through some of the key forecast assumptions that drive these figures.
Thank you, Shantel. So she gave you a good high-level look at the changes to the forecast. I'm going to kind of dive into more of the details and what has changed since our June 2024 update. The key assumptions are, of course, our growth forecast. This is based on our econometric update, which we did a few years ago, and has been the growth forecast in the last 2 annual forecast updates and the June 2024 update. We do make refinements to this in the near term, particularly in the next 2 fiscal years for FY 2025 and 2026, to account for the in-lane growth trend that we see, which is what is shown in your chart off to the left for total system traffic. Related to traffic impacts on construction, we did have some changes to the schedule based on the collapse of the FSK. Some of the projects related to the bridge itself have obviously been removed and will be completed prior to the reopening of the facility. In addition, the I-895 or the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel AET conversion project, the timeframe of this was shifted to account for, once again, the FSK reopening. So in our prior forecast, this was assumed to occur during the collapse period to account for the potential diversion from the BHT to both the FMT and the FSK bridge. This project was shifted out beyond the reopening. Additionally, the assumption for the bridge itself, we did assume fall 2028 or November 1st as the reopening date in this forecast. One of the bigger changes and the reason for the revenue shift, particularly on the legacy facilities, is our change for assumptions on the NOTD transactions, which are your video transactions. This is for the passengers that go through the gantry, the plate is read, and then the invoice is sent out. This change was based on the latest historical or latest trends on the actual system. So this is once again a re-benchmarking and refinement. As you guys age in your AET system, there will be trends that will change, and we're trying to accurately represent those on a facility basis and also on a vehicle access basis. So getting those trends to be more accurate for both passenger cars and the commercial vehicles. In terms of toll rate changes, we did not assume any future system-wide toll rate adjustments. The only thing that is accounted for in this year's forecast is a correction to the toll distance on the I-95 ETL in the northbound direction. And this will align with the opening of the first extension, which is assumed to occur January 1st, 2025. On to your next slide, we'll get into the details of breaking it out by each of the components. So the first chart shows your total revenue. This is both in-lane and administrative toll revenue. The near-term NOTD, or the video collection rate, as I said, is the big reason for the declines that we're seeing. The variation by year is due to some shifting of those construction impacts, when the FSK bridge will reopen, and also in alignment with the I-95 ETL extension openings. The bottom chart is showing just the legacy facilities, which are, the 7 bridges and tunnels, not including the ICC and the I-95 ETLs. This is your largest component for the revenue. So as I said, that 10 percentage point reduction for the NOTD collection rate is the reason for the declines compared to the last June 2024 forecast. The construction impacts essentially eliminated the dip that you're seeing in the prior forecast in fiscal 2028. So the dark line that represents the current forecast, you'll know, is a much more straight line trend. This is because we no longer have double diversion that would have been occurring in the previous forecast, because both the FSK would have been assumed to be not reopened yet, and the BHT AET conversion were aligning at the same time. Now that those aren't occurring, both in fiscal 2028, we have a much more consistent trend on the legacy system throughout the forecast period. So in total, the legacy revenue change is accounting for $73 million. If we go to your next slide, the top chart is showing the combined ICC and the ETLs. As Shantel mentioned earlier, this forecast is essentially the same as it was previously, although we're seeing a slight decline in the fiscal 2024 actuals versus the forecast from June. We are assuming a slight bump up in the next couple of years within the forecast through 2030. And this is just a shifting of the trips on the ICC, accounting for the accurate average toll that we're seeing, and then also the refinements to the I-95 ETL toll rates. The bottom chart is the administrative toll revenue. This is comprised of multiple different revenue sources, whether it's the HADM A and B plans, the commercial vehicle post-usage reimbursements, but also your civil penalty revenue, which comes from the video tolling now that you're in an AET environment. The civil penalty is really what drives the trend here the most. It is the highest share within this category. So the reason it's going up slightly over the next, 7 years here, is with the decline in NOTD payments, so people paying on time for video, we are assuming there will be a bump up in civil penalty collections. And this is based on the enforcement measures, which we're returning to normal. And so we are assuming just a slight uptick there with an increase of $27 million across the forecast period. If we go to the next slide, this is just the high level look, once again, looking at the total system in-lane and administrative revenue. So the overall declines compared to your June 2024 forecast is $71.3 million. There's certainly some uncertainties within our forecast. We do our best to, analyze, predict, and do what we can to forecast the most accurate forecast, but there are some things that, of course, we know, may not end up exactly how we assume. So those few items that we think are worth bringing up are your video collection rates. This is something that we do track month by month as the actuals come in, and something that we will continue to track and address in future forecasts as the system starts to mature in the AET environment. Along with this, of course, the impact of the enforcement measures for civil penalty will also play into that. We are assuming that slight uptick, and that's because we know tax intercept, motor vehicle registration hold, and suspension and things of that nature. As they get back to a normal condition, we do expect to see that civil penalty revenue amount increase. And that's all for me on this component. Certainly, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and I'm sure Shantel would as well.
Brevon Paris, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. This is the meeting of mute. But Kelly, thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions from any board members?
I have a question related to the NOTDs. I know we've talked about this in some other meetings before. Is our experience with the NOTDs similar to other systems and what they're experiencing when they transition to AET as well?
Yeah, so here at CDM Smith, of course, we work with multiple agencies across the country, not just, on the East Coast or in the Northeast. And it's not irregular, certainly within the few years, people will have to get used to the new payment system, people that were cash becoming video. We do expect there to be, a slow roll, and you're essentially getting your good paying customers converting to ETC. And so we kind of need to see what are those new trends going to be for those, the regular video paying customers, and it's very, very in line with other similar sized agencies.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I do have a couple of quick questions here, kind of related. I've seen in the marketplace, being in some of the relocation business that I'm in, that some people are returning to work. So I'm interested on behalf of MDTA on how that, if that's been factored in, so the return to work, if that change has been considered, is that real? Is that just, would that bump it up? The other thing, the two other related questions would be the economy, the economic forecast, how that factors in to this. Are we projecting a stronger economy or not, or are we being conservative? And I don't know if it gets that detailed or not. But then the last question would be about commercial traffic, and if we lost any major accounts with the port, and do we anticipate getting all that back? And if not, that's going to certainly have an impact to our revenue streams. So they're my three questions.
Sure. So within the growth forecast, the econometric modeling kind of touches on a few of the topics that you had. In the trucks, we do have a slight decline that we've been assuming over the past couple of years, which is what has happened based on the in-lane growth. So when I say the in-lane growth, that's the traffic that's passing directly through the gantry before any of the collections are being accounted for, with video and things of that nature. So we look at by facility what the daily in-lane traffic is like. We look at it year over year. Historically, what does your growth look like versus what is the growth looking like now? And that's kind of how we do these refinements. So the truck of growth, obviously, during COVID was higher than it's ever been historically. And so once we did that econometric modeling, we were accounting for a decrease slight over time to kind of re-benchmark back to a normal growth for the commercial vehicles. And as you said, obviously, the trucks are a good share of your toll revenue. And so we did want to be, accounting for that negative growth. And then beyond the negative growth, I think it's after fiscal 2026, we have a very moderate growth. Your system historically, and for other type facilities that are, legacy, long-standing systems, the amount of growth we anticipate is not high. It's less than 1% on average across your whole system in the outer years. And I think this is a conservative growth assumption. Because we don't want to assume, 2% plus, you don't see that on a system that's of your age. That's something you see on new express lane systems, things of that nature. And then in terms of, the trucks as well, we are trying to account for the different payment rates we see by axle and fine tuning that. So I think in terms of how we analyze and we update the econometric model, it kind of accounts for both the economy, the trucking industry, and when it comes to the FSK itself, we did do our best to try to look and see what's happening, where are the trucks going. And the diversion from that system has been quite static since July when the port reopened. So right after the bridge fell, there was a bit of uncertainty of where will the trucks go, right? Are they going to go to BHT? Are they going to go to FMT? Are some going to have to go to 695 due to, hazardous or oversized vehicles? Those are all things we looked at back in June, and we did do our best to, look at them again for this annual update. But what we were seeing is in the daily data, like I said, the trend in terms of who's shifting has been very static since July. So I think we felt comfortable with the assumptions we made there. And given the alternate routes and the timing that it would take for some of these diversions, we don't foresee there being a long-term impact after the reopening of FSK where, there's this lost revenue of certain trucks or routes, because majority of these people are now using your other facilities at the Fort McHenry Tunnel and the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel. So you guys do have that benefit of having all three harbor crossings being parallel, that you are maintaining a large share of the diverted traffic from the FSK.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, well, any other discussion here? Okay, we will, and Shantel, thank you as well. We will move on to item number 4. Jeffrey Brown will present the traffic or the fiscal year 2026 preliminary operating budget. Good morning, Jeffrey.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Brown, Budget Director for the MDTA. I'm here today to request a recommendation for contingent approval to the MDTA board for the fiscal year 2026 budget. It's contingent because DBM typically provides updated fringe rates in December to us. The proposed fiscal 2026 operating budget is $450 million, which represents a $15.9 million or 3.7% increase versus fiscal 25. The key drivers are the mandated personnel expenses, insurance premiums, Easy Pass Service Center costs, engineering costs, the collective bargaining vehicle purchases, and road repairs. These are partially offset by reduced IT costs. Typically, we provide a breakdown of the budget into 3 categories: mandated increases, discretionary additions, and discretionary reductions. The mandated increases are $6.1 million, discretionary additions are $12.9 million, and the discretionary reductions are $3.1 million. This is what nets to the $15.9 million increase. Moving into a little bit more detail on the mandated changes, as mentioned, it's a $6.1 million increase. It's due to base salaries, excluding the Maryland State Police, had an increase of $3.2 million. This is due to step increases and reclasses for both civilian and sworn employees. The Maryland State Police salaries plus retirement costs increased $1.1 million. Workers' compensation, which is provided by DBM, increased $0.8 million. Employee pension costs, both civilian and sworn, increased $0.8 million, while overtime increased $0.4 million. In addition, deferred compensation increased $0.4 million. There were minor increases in Social Security and health insurance with a $0.2 million and $0.1 million respective increases. And finally, unemployment insurance actually decreased $0.2 million due to changes provided by DBM. All the other fringe rates in this mandated area decreased $0.5 million. Moving on to discretionary spending or discretionary additions for the $12.9 million. The drivers are engineering costs of $1.7 million. This is due to additional compliance costs, additional project costs, and updated market rates for labor and overhead. Insurance premiums increased $1.6 million due to the market cost pressures we've seen before in property and liability insurance. Vehicle purchases and vehicle maintenance increased $2.3 million. This is due to the ongoing replacement activity and the purchase of the collective bargaining vehicles. Easy Pass Service Center costs increased $1.1 million. Let me say it again, increased $1 million. This increase aligns with the projected increase in transactions that we have for our model. Building repairs and maintenance increased 0.8 million. This is to align with fiscal 2024 activity and has ongoing maintenance activities such as sludge removal from the tunnels and drawbridge maintenance. Large vehicle purchases and maintenance increased 1.2 million due to the replacement needs for heavy duty vehicles such as tractors and utility trailers. And there is some spillover from prior year due to orders not coming in. IT-related expenses for repairs and maintenance, for outside services design and software maintenance increased 1.6 million. Primarily, what we have with IT is there's various contracts that run on like 3 or 5 year cycles. So for the repairs and maintenance, this is due to a triennial payment for backup and recovery systems. That's due in fiscal 26, which is why that's increased. And then a combination of IT contract rates, and again, another 3-year payment, in this case for VMware, increased the other sub-object totals. Electric utilities increased 0.3 million to align with fiscal 24 actual costs, while additional equipment increased 0.3 million due to intelligent transportation services increases. The remaining 2.1 million increases spread across multiple items, basically 36 objects, with the big ones being advertising, radios, janitorial services, and transponders. Moving on to discretionary reductions of 3.1 million, we had application software maintenance or IT costs decreased by 0.7 million due to reduced needs. Microcomputers, basically computers, decreased 0.7 million. We've had prior year purchases, which has put the organizational needs basically been met in prior years. So there's a reduction in needs this year. And other IT-related expenses such as IT outside services for computer usages, data services, and electronic equipment decreased 0.6 million due to reduced needs. Fiscal services, which is our credit card fees, decreased 0.2 million as a result of a reduction in the interchange rates or fees for credit cards. All other reductions were 0.9 million and went across multiple lines. The big ones were management studies and snow removal. Finally, we have a graphical presentation of where our funding goes by division and by purpose. As you can see, by division, facilities account for 51%, the MDTA police counts for 27%, and G&A expenses are 19%, with the Maryland State Police being 3%. Finally, by purpose, we have personnel expenses account for 54%, contractual services are 33%, while all other is 13%. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions at this time.
Hey, are there any questions?
Yeah, I have just 2 questions. One is related to the board approved regulation that we discussed related to the Easy Pass centers and the reduction of the maintenance fees from eliminating dormant Easy Pass accounts. Is that incorporated into this, the savings from that?
I don't know if Shantel maybe knows. I'd have to probably circle back on our forecast to see if that's directly included. I don't know right offhand.
No, we
yeah,
have not.
Right.
We have not incorporated that savings, potential savings into this forecast.
Okay, so that'll be about 3.6 million, I believe was the number, 300 a month.
I'm sorry. I
That
don't
was,
recall the number.
yeah, that was the estimate of 3.6, 300,000 monthly.
Okay. Great. Okay, so that was one question. The other question relates to the insurance premium. So the cost pressure, I assume that's related to just anything that would happen to the premium in lieu of the FSK. Do we anticipate any additional insurance premium since that was a total loss, and any impact on the insurance premium there?
Yeah, I don't know the details, and I know that we get some of the information from Treasury or from TSO directly. That's what their latest forecast for the insurance rates were on this. That's what was incorporated. In terms of your specific question around the Key Bridge, I don't know right offhand. I'd have to follow up on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a question about the utility cost, electricity, the 0.3 million.
Right.
Do you know a percentage of an increase that is roughly? Because the electric cost of electricity is, from everything all the research I've done here lately, I think that Brandon Shores closure and some other things, I think it's going to really rise the cost of electricity, and the shutdown of the Brandon Shores, or the plan to shut that down, and it's already starting to impact. I'm just curious if you don't have to give it to me. No,
Well, the percentage is, at least on the detail, shows it's a 7.5% increase.
Okay. Sorry, I should have looked there. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Would have been a lot easier. I'm sorry. Apologize. Okay, this is an approval item, so I will ask, is there a motion to advance this item to the full board for approval?
So moved. Member Rosen?
Second,
you,
member
members.
Carroll.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Yep,
Jeffrey,
thank you.
thank you very much. I appreciate it. And next time I'll pay more attention to that
It's just-
7.5%.
No, it's not a
you.
problem at all. A lot of information. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to and the next item number 5, final fiscal year 2025 through 2030 Consolidated Transportation Program. Jennifer Stump will present. Good morning, Jennifer. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you. For the record, my name is Jennifer Stump, and I am the Assistant Capital Program Manager. Today, I'm presenting the proposed fiscal year 2025 to 2030 final CTP and seeking your recommendation for approval to the full board on November 21st. This was also recommended for approval by the Capital Committee on November 6th of 2024. The proposed 6-year fiscal year 25 to 30 final CTP is $5.1 billion. This reflects a net increase of $93.9 million as seen on attachment number 1, line 7. The net increase is a result of the following: a decrease in the 6-year CTP budget by $391,000 for the Francis Scott Key Bridge, attachment 1, line 1. A decrease in the 6-year CTP budget by $16.9 million for the Nice Middleton Bridge, seen on attachment 1, line 2. A decrease in the 6-year CTP budget by $1.9 million for the I-95 ETL Northern Extensions, as seen on attachment 1, line 3. An increase in the 6-year CTP budget by $214.6 million for all projects except the Key Bridge, Nice Middleton Bridge, and I-95 ETL Northern Extension and the reserves, as seen in attachment 1, line 4. And a decrease in the allocated and unallocated reserves by $101.5 million, as seen in attachment 1, line 5. Fiscal year 2024 expenditures were $407.4 million versus the $434.4 million budgeted in the fiscal year 25 to 30 draft CTP, as reflected on line 7 of attachment 1. The fiscal year 24 underspending was $27 million and has been rolled over into the final CTP. Highlights of project and reserve changes are shown in attachment 2. For new projects, we added 11 system preservation projects for a net increase of $12.5 million in the fiscal year 25 to 30 period. For construction phases, the construction phase of 5 projects was funded for a total of $137.5 million transferred from the reserves as design reached 60% and cost estimates were developed on fully developed scopes. For modified budgets to reflect completed projects, we had 12 projects that were completed or deleted for a net decrease of $6.1 million in the fiscal year 25 to 30 period. For modified active projects due to cost changes and cash flow adjustments, adjusted cash flows and funded changes in engineering and/or construction budgets for 85 projects for a net increase of $51.5 million. And for reserve changes, the allocated reserves decreased by 101.5 million and the unallocated reserves remain the same. Attachment number 3 details where the projects are by facility. 36.2% are at the Key Bridge. 19.8% are Kennedy Highway. 14.3% are William Preston Lane Memorial Bridge. 10.2% are multi-area. 8.8% are at the Fort McHenry Tunnel. 7.7% are at the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel. And there's less than 2% each at the ICC, Hayden Bridge, Nice Bridge, and Point Breeze. Attachment number 4 details the projects by category. We have 37.9% in bridge replacements, 21.9% in structures preservation, 16.5% in safety and capacity improvements, 8.5% in highway preservation, 4.1% in enhancements, 4% in campus facility improvements, 3.3% in campus facility preservation, 2.5% in tunnel preservation, and less than 1% each in environmental and unallocated reserves. That concludes the presentation of the final CTP, and again, we're seeking your recommendation for approval to the full board.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, I don't see any. Is there a motion to advance this item to the full board?
Move to approve. Member Carroll.
Thank you, Member Carroll. Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you, Member Rosen. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Jennifer, thanks again.
Thank you
very-
all.
Yep. Item 5 was the last approval item for the meeting. We have 2 more items left. We'll move to item number 6. And Shantel Green will present she will talk about unofficial fiscal year 2025 through 2030 financial forecast. Morning. Again, Shantel, how are you? There we
Good
go.
morning. Good morning again. Thank you. Today I'll be presenting the fiscal year 2024 through 2030 financial forecast update. As Member Von Paris noted, you'll note that this is an update item as opposed to an approval item. We're currently in the process of truing up fiscal year 2024 and will present the official forecast for your approval at the board meeting. All other key aspects of the forecast have been updated to include the updated traffic and revenue report that was presented here today, as well as the proposed operating and capital budgets. With that, I'd like to direct your attention to the key takeaways on page 152 of your PDF materials. You note that through fiscal year 2027, the authority remains in compliance with its financial goals and legal standards. This is consistent with the June forecast. Despite the loss of the FSK Bridge, the authority has sufficient cash flow and capital reserves in fiscal year 2025 to support additional expenses associated with the FSK Bridge replacement without going to the bond market. And based on current forecast estimates, beginning in fiscal year 2028, a system-wide toll increase will be necessary to maintain 2 times debt service coverage throughout the remainder of the forecast period. The next page outlines the primary differences between the current forecast and the most recently approved forecast. Regarding toll revenue, the forecast reflects a $46 million decline in toll revenues throughout the 2024 through 2030 forecast period. The majority of the decrease is due to the reduction in assumed NOTD collection rate and the re-benchmarking of traffic across all facilities based on recent trends. These reductions are partially offset by an increase in the assumed civil penalty collection rate and a revision in the construction-related diversion impacts resulting from the Key Bridge collapse. Next, operating budget expenses decreased by $65 million throughout the forecast period. The decline is mostly due to adjustments associated with collective bargaining police patrol vehicles and slightly lower than anticipated fiscal year 2026 operating expenses, both of which are compounded in future years. These reductions are offset by increases in personnel, engineering, Easy Pass Service Center, as well as insurance costs. Capital expenses increased by approximately $94 million, mostly due to the rollover of unexpended funds from the prior year into future fiscal years and the inclusion of 11 new projects and other minor budget increases. Bond issuances and debt service costs increased by $275 million and $47 million respectively over the forecast period. This is due to lower toll revenues, a modest increase in the capital budget, and adjustments to the external funding sources associated with the Key Bridge rebuild that reduced the amount of pay-go or cash funding available for capital spending. Regarding insurance funds, the forecast assumes that $25 million of the $350 million in insurance proceeds will be used for salvage and debris removal costs, and that the remaining proceeds will be applied toward federally eligible Key Bridge rebuild project costs after the $60 million in federal quick release funds are exhausted. The forecast assumes that after we spend down our remaining insurance proceeds, beginning in fiscal year 2027, the authority will be reimbursed by the federal government for eligible project costs at a 90% federal, 10% MDTA split, with a 1-year lag from the time the costs are incurred until the MDTA is reimbursed. The state is continuing to engage in ongoing discussions with the federal government about the feasibility of obtaining full federal funding for eligible project costs. If Congress acts to allow for 100% federal funding, the authority's assumptions will be updated or adjusted during the next forecast update. Ineligible project costs will also be incorporated into future forecasts as these expenses become known. The funding source table shows the estimated funding sources for the $1.7 billion in capital costs associated with the Key Bridge reconstruction. It is assumed that approximately $1.2 billion, or 73%, will be paid for with federal funds. $325 million, or 19%, will be paid for with insurance proceeds, and that the remaining $137 million, or 8%, will be paid for using MDTA funds. And again, as previously mentioned, based on current forecast estimates, beginning in fiscal year 2028, a system-wide toll increase will be necessary to maintain 2 times debt service coverage throughout the remainder of the forecast period. Those are the major changes reflected in the forecast. And with that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantel. Are there any questions? Okay. If not, we will move on to the next. Shantel, you're still up, right? For item numbers, the last item, number 7, which is another update, and you'll present on the biannual revenue review of revenue sufficiency.
Yes, thank you.
So, thank you.
The authority's board operating policy requires a biannual review of revenue sufficiency to determine if current rate and fee levels are appropriate based on expected levels of spending. The biannual review of revenue sufficiency is essentially a companion item to the financial forecast. The financial forecast update that was just presented shows that the authority's current toll rates, as well as fees and discounts, provide enough revenue through fiscal year 2027 to meet forecasted spending and all legal and policy requirements. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Looks like there are no questions. Shantel, thank you again.
Thank you.
And before we adjourn, I just want to thank the members for being here today. We did this. We did have a quorum. We had a little technical issues that happens. I had it too a little bit before, but also I want to thank everyone who I guess planned for the meeting, prepared for the meeting, and participated in the meeting today. It's sometimes it's overlooked, but there's a lot behind these meetings, and this meeting in particular, a lot of numbers, a lot of really good, important information that we review and there's a big effort in it. So I just want to recognize everyone for that and show appreciation for the great job that you all do to make this meeting and everything else work at MDTA. So anyway, that's all. They're my closing comments. I guess at this point, we'll seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Member Rosen.
Thank you, Member Rosen.
Second, Member Carroll.
Thank you, Member Carroll. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.